All right, good evening, everyone. We'll call this Committee of Adjustment hearing to order. Just before we get started this evening, I'm just going to go over the protocol for tonight's meeting. We have 4 properties with multiple applications on some of them that we'll be hearing tonight. Just a little bit of housekeeping for anyone that's here. If you have cell phones, can you please put them on vibrate or mute or turn them off? And if you do come forward to ask questions about an application, if you would please address your questions through the chair and not directly to the person being asked. The first order of business that I'll go through is to ask the committee members if they have any pecuniary interests or conflicts with any of the applications this evening. I will follow that by a request for any deferrals of or withdrawals of application that are on the agenda. I think we have a couple applicants that will be coming in electronically. I will ask them as soon as they're brought into the meeting to confirm that aspect. Following that, the Secretary Treasurer will read out any of the application with a brief description and staff recommendation. The applicant or the agent for the applicant will be asked to come forward. If they're here in person, they can go to the podium on the right, introduce themselves, be allowed to add any additional information that they wish, or for those ones electronically, we'll bring them into the meeting and same protocol there. Members of the committee will then have the opportunity to ask any questions that they have of the applicant, followed by members of the public that wish to speak to an application. Any members of the public wishing to speak to an application will be asked to come forward, state their name and address for the record. Again, they go to the podium on the right. And it's important that if they do come forward, they have about 10 minutes to ask any and all questions that they have that's pertinent to that application in that time frame. Persons making a presentation may not necessarily be allowed to return again to speak to the same application or applications. We try to do it by each individual property. Following all comments, the applicant will be afforded some closing comments if desired. The committee then will present a decision in the form of a motion. The motion will be discussed and voted upon. If a vote is tied, the motion will be defeated and a new motion will be made. If a motion is defeated, new motions will be made until a decision has been reached. Notices of decision will only be provided to those persons who leave their names and addresses in writing with the Secretary Treasurer. For those that are in attendance, there's a page at the back for that purpose. For those watching online, you can email our soon-to-be new Secretary Treasurer, Taya Taraba, at TAYA.TARABA@portcolborne.com, or you can call 905-835-2900, extension 24, immediately following the hearing and leave a message requesting same with your name and address and contact information. It should also be noted that in order to be kept advised of any possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearings, persons must request and be sent a copy of the committee's decision on an application. Trusting everyone understands the process, I'll first ask if there's any conflicts of interest with applications this evening. Eric?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a conflict on item 6.4, which are applications B05-16-PC, B06-16-PC, B07-16-PC, B08-16-PC, 480 Northland Avenue, as the applicant or the owner, is a client of my employer.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing any. I don't think we have any requests for deferrals or withdrawals of applications that are in the house this evening. Not seeing any. And again, when we bring in the applicant that's online, we will ask that question again. So with that being said, I would normally go right to the first application, but since we have a new Secretary Treasurer joining us this evening, I'll ask for a motion to accept Taya as our new Secretary Treasurer, at least interimly or permanently, whatever the case may be. Angie, seconder to that. Eric, all those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you. So with that, I will turn it over to our new Secretary Treasurer for the first application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the agenda tonight, we have 4 minor variance applications and 5 consent applications. Notice of the applications were circulated to the public on October 16th. The required agencies received note of the applications on October 25th. A recommendation report for each application was prepared by the planning staff and made publicly available on November 6th. All correspondence received by November 3rd were addressed in the recommendation reports. Those interested can review the recommendation reports online on the city's website or in person at City Hall. Those interested may also contact planning staff in person, by email, or over the phone to obtain a copy of the reports. Accommodations for alternative methods of viewing or obtaining the recommendation reports are available upon request. Please note, the zoning bylaw currently in effect of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw is 6,575/3018 as amended, which will be henceforth referred to as the zoning bylaw. Our first application tonight is minor variance application A2423PC for the lands municipally known as vacant lot on Oakwood Street in a mixed-use zone as established by the zoning bylaw. The applicants, Jordan Michaels and Matthew Beek, are requesting relief from the provisions of the zoning bylaw to permit the construction of a detached dwelling, notwithstanding the following: that a rear yard setback of 4.17 meters be permitted, whereas 6 meters is required. Given the information in the recommendation report, planning staff recommends application A2423PC be granted. For the reasons that are, the application is minor in nature, it is appropriate for the development of the site, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, and it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan. That concludes the correspondence to the application.
Thank you. Is the applicant here this evening? The agent for the applicant here this evening? Not one that's online, is it?
No.
So they didn't even attend? All right. Guess we're not asking him any questions. Oakwood. Okay. So with that, is there any members of the public that wish to speak to this application? Not seeing any. We don't have anyone online that wishes to speak to it. Is there any questions or comments from the committee members? Not seeing any. Has anyone got a recommendation? Angie?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Application A24-23-PC. The land's legally known as Lot 137 on Plan 797 in the City of Port Colborne, municipally known as a vacant lot on Oakwood Street. That the minor variance application A24-23-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, the application is minor in nature. 2, it is appropriate for the development of the site. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent of the purpose and purpose of the zoning bylaw. 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Eric? Questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you. The next application, whenever you're ready.
I will now introduce the consent application B1723PC and its two accompanying minor variance applications A2023PC and A2123PC. The subject lands are municipally known as 30 Lewis Street in the 3rd Density Residential Zone. In application B1723PC, Agent Mayu Balasubramaniam, on behalf of the owner Ambalahan Selvaknaraja, is requesting the committee's consent to sever for the purpose of separating two dwellings located on one property. The subject parcels are shown as Part 1 and 2 on the proposed sketch, and which Part 2 is to be severed for an existing residential use, and Part 1 is to be retained for an existing residential use. In application A2023PC and A2123PC, the agent and their client are requesting for relief from provisions of the zoning bylaw to permit the severance of subject property in accordance with the consent application B1723PC. Given the information in the recommendation reports, planning staff recommends application A2023PC and A2123PC be granted for the following reasons. The application is minor in nature, it is appropriate for the development of the site, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, and it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Given the information in the recommendation report, planning staff also recommends application B1723PC be granted subject to conditions outlined in the staff report dated November 3rd, 2023. This report can also be requested for viewing by the public if desired through the planning staff. That concludes the correspondence for these applications.
Thank you. And I believe this applicant is our
give me
agent for
one
the applicant.
moment. It says they're joining. They're just connecting the audio.
Good evening. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you. Just before you get started, you don't wish to defer or withdraw your application this evening?
No.
Very good. Is there anything further you'd like to add at this time with regards to the applications?
No.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of the applicant?
No.
Not seeing any. The only question I have to the applicant or the agent for the applicant is in reference to the patio or side porch, which is actually 262 Fair Street. Currently, in the drawing that was provided, the property line proposed will go right through that extension. I'm assuming it's your intent to take that side portion of the porch off?
Is this for the 30 Louis?
Pardon me?
Is this for the 30 Louis Street?
Yes. But the
Okay.
the one property is actually on Ferris, the one that's further back from Lewis Street.
Yes.
The property line goes right through the porch. Is your plan to take off that porch?
If it is required, yes, we can.
Okay. So with that, just to planning staff, what's the minimum side yard, interior side yard setback that would need to be there to that porch? An extra meter?
To the chair, it would need to be 1 meter. Judging by what the distance is, it looks like the shallowest is 1.01, plus they are getting the relief of 0.97, so it would appear they would meet the side yard setback.
So it'd have to meet that minimum, whatever we
Yeah.
grant, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Okay, thank you. All right, that's the only questions that I have. If no one else has any questions, is there any members of the public that wish to speak to this particular application this evening? Not seeing any. Is there any other questions or comments? I look for a recommendation. Gary?
Mr. Chair, was this A20 or B17?
You can do them however you want. You can do the severance first and then the two variances, or vice versa.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to application A2023, for the lands legally known as part of Lot 24 on Plan 843, municipally known as 30 Lewis Street. Given the information attached, planning staff recommends application A2023 be granted for the following reasons. 1, the application is minor in nature. 2, is appropriate for the development of the site. 3, it is desirable in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. 4, it is desirable in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Want to vote on that one first, then?
Sure. Can I get a seconder for that, Angie? Questions or comments? Microphone, please, Chair. Sorry, thank you. Seconder, Angie. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Gary, are you going to do the other ones as well?
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to application B17-23 PC in the matter of the Planning Act, for the lands legally known as Registered Plan 843 Lot 24, municipally known as 30 Lewis Street, the consent application B1723 be granted subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report dated November 3rd, 2023. For the following reasons. 1, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the regional official plan, City of Port Colborne official plan, and will also comply with the provisions of zoning bylaws 6575/30/18 as amended.
Thank you. A seconder, Angie. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Be carried. And you still got 821, correct? Are you going to move 821?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Respect to application A2123, the land's legally known as part of Lot 24 on Plan 843, municipally known as 30 Lewis Street. Given the information above, planning staff recommends application A2123 PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, the application is minor in nature. 2, it is appropriate for the development of the site. 3, it is desirable in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. 4, it is desirable in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan.
Thank you. Seconder? Angie? Questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you. There is a 20-day waiting period, but following that, you should be good to follow through with the rest of the requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Madam Secretary, the next application at your leisure.
Our next application is minor variance application A2223 PC for the lands municipally known as a vacant lot on Catherine Street in the 4th Density Residential Zone as established in the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw. The agent, Chris Lamb, on behalf of the owner, is requesting relief from the provisions of the zoning bylaw to permit the construction of a stacked townhouse development notwithstanding the following. The landscape buffer of 1.5 meters be permitted, whereas 3 meters is required. That a driveway width of 3 meters be permitted, whereas 1.75 meters is required for two-way traffic. That a front yard setback of 6.2 meters be permitted, whereas 9 meters is required. That a side yard landscape buffer of 0 meters be permitted, whereas 3 meters is required for a parking area abutting a residential zone. That a minimum interior side yard setback of 2 meters be permitted, whereas 3 meters is required. Given the information in the recommendation report, planning staff recommends that the proposed variances for landscape buffer reduction, front yard setback, and side yard setback identified on the notice of hearing as numbers 1, 3, 4, and 5 be granted for the following reasons. The application is minor in nature, it is appropriate for the development of the site, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, and it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan. And the proposed variance for the driveway width, identified as the notice of hearing as number 2, be denied for the following reasons. The variance is not minor in nature, it is not appropriate for the development of the site, and it is not desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. And that concludes the correspondence of these applications.
Thank you. The agent for the applicant has already taken his spot there, so if there's anything further you'd like to add at this time, please feel free.
Yep, good evening, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? How close do I have to be? Sorry. Okay. Mr. Chair and committee, okay. I just noticed, unfortunately, the last couple of days, was there a site plan that was sent out by city staff with the report? Correct? Okay, so we're familiar with the site plan?
Yes, it was part of the application. That we
Yeah,
made.
okay. I apologize. Sometimes when I get the report, they have the attachments. Mine did not. But in any case, the variance that was not supported by staff had been initially, and that's why it's in the application. As of last week, one of the staff members had spoke to engineering, suggesting that they were no longer supporting. They had not yet given a reason. Well, I could presume, you know, again, it wasn't minor, which I would agree, and possibly purchase a portion of the parcel to the south. But in any case, I suppose I'm not that animated to defend that approval. I would just hope that staff will work courteously to sell that parcel if possible, because otherwise the site cannot move forward. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the applicant from staff? Gary?
Sorry, back to the applicant. To our planner, Chris, with respect to the applicant's comments, obviously, if purchase of that property was required in the opinion of the applicant, um, did staff or engineering give a reason? I guess where I'm going with all of this is, if we did sell it, would that recommendation have changed? Because it sounds like the applicant is asking that this could continue with a sale. And so I guess my position is, it would be nice to wrap that all up in one, but I guess if the applicant, but I'm switching back and forth, if the applicant is okay with the first part and the second to be continued, maybe I should ask you that first before I go to Chris.
Yeah, if I understood correctly, so Chris had gave me the option to either defer this tonight or proceed. I was hoping to proceed with the variances that staff did support. Again, we don't have a conclusive answer yet to the sale of the parcel. Again, I just wanted to bring it to committee's attention tonight to state we don't typically bring things to committee that aren't supported by staff. Again, it was in there because we have been led to believe for a certain amount of time. Again, things do change. But like I said, it was only about 5 days ago or 6 or whatever the case is, that support had changed direction. So again, I just wanted to bring it up that if we could, while it won't be answered here tonight, that if the variance is not supported by Mr. Chair and the committee, that we could try and expedite a process to purchase this lot if they'd be willing.
Yes, Chris, why don't I let you answer first? I have another comeback to that comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Bruno, the purchase of the land is definitely not something that we can solve tonight. I've put the applicant in contact with our economic development officer to get the ball rolling on that. And I think that some wheels are in motion from what I understand. So, it's kind of up to the committee's decision here how they want to pursue with the application. The option is either to defer the entire item or accept it the way it is with the one denied application, considering that the applicant is likely going to have to come back to the Committee of Adjustment anyways to address the driveway width regardless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess to come back to you, my concern, is, so it sounds like you were aware of that a purchase would have to happen, because you said 5 or 6 days ago, so you knew of this. But what was it you were saying you were unaware that this was going to be here tonight?
So yeah, up until 6 days ago, that opportunity to purchase the parcel. This was just sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can finish it.
I only became aware that it was unsupported by staff about a week ago.
Oh, okay.
But I think exactly a week ago today.
Okay, that's fine for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
Through Mr. Chair to the applicant. So I understand the application is through site plan control currently. Was there not some comments from the city regarding this? Because they should have provided comments, and engineering, I would assume, or should have, in any place, made a comment regarding this at least the first submission.
Yeah, twofold. The initial site plan comments haven't been received. We were anticipating doing the variances first. However, there were comments by planning staff, not Chris Room, but his associate, that, as I mentioned, had initially supported this variance.
Okay. Sorry. So you're still waiting on engineering comments in terms of the site plan control application?
Correct. Yes.
And how long ago did you submit?
We have not submitted.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Because I guess one of the concerns I have is if we allow these variances, those variances continue in perpetuity, and that is concerning because we're doing this specifically for a site-specific design. So if they were to sell the property and they want to do a different design, I am not comfortable with a 0-meter landscape buffer for any future dwelling that goes there, for example. But they'd be permitted to do so under this variance. So that's something that's in the back of my mind. And I don't know, Chris, do you have any comments maybe that you can add to that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Beauregard. Yeah, it's it's a valid opinion. Layering on top of that there was a minor variance approval 2 years ago as well for this property. So it's kind of like a double whammy, I suppose, of variances. There was a brief discussion with the applicant too, after we had discussed the recommendation to maybe apply for a round of site plan comments and then come forward for what you need. The logic there being that once you have a round of site plan comments, you generally know what the footprint of the building is going to look like, because site plan comments first round can definitely change a lot of the layout of the structure. So yeah, that's just kind of my 2 cents there. Thanks.
Yeah, so just a comment, just to echo on that, I agree. My experience in this industry is to wait until about maybe the second round of comments even before applying for variances. So at least that, because based on what you said, there's a lot of site design that can be changed based on the engineering comments through site plan control. So I think it would be best to move towards maybe a deferral until comments are made. But is there not timeline? Like, do we have any timelines that we must make a decision by?
If I might answer that one.
Okay.
There is no timelines for us to make a decision. The only timeline is for it to have a hearing start.
Okay.
Second, to your other point, at this point in time, it wouldn't be a deferral, it'd be an adjournment.
Yeah.
In which case we'd just kind of freeze the discussion that we've had to date. The third, and I was just trying to quickly look, in the staff's recommendation, was there a condition for a site plan agreement as well?
To you, Mr. Chair, no, there was no condition there, and I would just add as well that there's a bit of a time frame on the applicant's side of things in our fee bylaw. If you adjourn an item or have an item adjourned or deferred, and the item goes past a year without significant progress being made on it, then that application is completely null and void, and a new one is required. So.
Okay. And just one further point to your comment about the variance being applied to just this particular request. There's nothing that says that once you grant this, they're going to build that specifically, and they're just going to have to build something within that parameter, right? Especially because we don't have a condition for a site plan agreement. But even if you did, there's nothing to limit what they can actually build afterwards.
So yeah, I agree in most cases, but as this one would be under site plan control, they wouldn't be, like, they would be restricted to what the concept plan or site plan that's been provided. So I would be more comfortable permitting these, knowing that through site plan agreement, they will not be permitted to do anything other. So in that's where I'm a little bit different. That's where I waver a little bit.
So just to be clear though, so you would be recommending that there's also that condition of a site plan agreement based on the current proposal that's being presented?
Yeah, so based on your comment, because you brought that in, I think that would be a good condition to add into this.
Thank you. Gary, did you have a question?
Well, I think I'm traveling down that same road, but maybe if this is the all-encompassing issue, you specifically talked about site plan and about that 0 meter buffer being removed. So then other than an adjournment, and to your point where you don't want this property to go through with just certain conditions on it, could the second part to conclude potentially the application tonight as opposed to adjournment, and I'm not sure if this is where you're going, but obviously it sounds like you need the purchase of that land to, whether it's Member Beauregard's concern or the driveway, you need the purchase of the land to complement this, to make this happen. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, again, unfortunately, I've just had a few days to digest. I hate to make things a little more complex. I do agree with both Chris and committee member Eric. There's an alternative side where if I don't get certain minor variances, we don't get the lot, we go for site plan, sooner than later, then we're going through planning and engineering staff not knowing what our ultimate outcome is without having the variances and or the parcel.
Right.
But again, I guess that's not exactly previous to tonight.
Okay.
So through you to our planner, Chris, so if the second part that they're seeking was conditional upon the sale of the land, and I guess anything else but the site plan agreement, it would mean that they would have the property with those conditions on it, because we don't ask for site plan for other things in our variances. So if it was conditional upon the purchase of the property and deal with the zero setback, could that not satisfy both the proponent, conclude things tonight? They'd have to do site plan anyways. So it wouldn't need to be a part of this, would it, Chris?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think having a condition of the sale of land is something that's pretty challenging for us, I think, to apply to a recommendation. So I would probably steer away from that as a condition. Yeah, I'll let the agent
Sorry,
speak.
could you clarify what was the condition proposed?
Believe, through you, Mr. Chair, I think the member Bruno was proposing possibly adding a condition that that the land be acquired by yourself. Being that, I assume what I'm understanding is that all the variances would be approved on the condition that they purchase the city's land.
Yeah, because that's the only way. That's the only way they could go forward, but perhaps one of the other conditions, as Member Beauregard's talk about, is zero, was it setback, Eric? Landscape buffer. Because all the other issues seems to me to be site plan related. So we don't generally do site plan as a condition. So if that variance that accommodation was made as one of the conditions and the purchase, I just thought that would expedite the process. And yes, the land would be then solidified that way with no building on it. So if that's the issue, I guess you didn't include site plan in here in the first place, so why is it necessary now?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, site plan, it's required anyways. I think the point that Member Beauregard is making is that it kind of it negates that potential for the applicant to sell the land, and then there's a piece of land with all these variances on it that you can create all these different shapes with. I lost my train of thought there for a second. Yeah.
Eric?
Just to Member Bruno, yeah, typically we don't do a site plan control as a condition, but that's because site plan control is not typically allowed in those most circumstances. It's because of the amount of units that this application brings. I believe 10 or more units require site plan control. I think that's the case. So because of that, we can conditionalize it there and make that.
Mr. Chair, I just regained my train of thought. By adding the condition, if the committee chooses to add a condition for the acquisition of the city land, it kind of handcuffs, I think, the potential for the agent to just workshop the idea as well. If there is any option where they address some site plan concerns without purchasing the piece of land, we may be kind of handcuffing it a bit in that sense.
Eric?
So it sounds like we're going down the road of potentially conditionalizing with the site plan control. My only other concern with that is how long it may take in order to get the site plan agreement. So I believe the condition, the applicant has 2 years to fulfill the condition. Now, to you, Chris, do you believe that it's feasible that they can get a site plan agreement ready within 2 years?
Yes, I would be a little intricate about the wording because as of recently, due to Bill 23, we have to provide a decision within 60 days for site plan. And the position of staff has been to provide a conditional agreement after 60 days. So if it's the decision of the committee to provide that as a condition, I would probably recommend that it be worded that a conditional site plan agreement be granted. That way, after 60 days, we will issue that. But it's going to depend too on when the applicant submits the application. So as long as they submit it within 2 years less 60 days, we should be in the position to issue a conditional agreement.
Just on a point of clarity, where do you get the 2 years from?
That's, I believe that's under the Planning Act.
For consents?
For consents, yeah, is it not applied for variance as well?
No.
Is that the case, Chris?
Sorry, through Mr. Chair. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sorry, the chair is correct?
It's no, once his 20 days are up, for him to be able to get his variance, he needs to meet that condition, however long it takes to meet that condition. Once he meets that condition, then he gets his variances. Until he meets that condition, if it takes 30 days or 130 years, technically, once he meets that condition, then he would have his variance and away he goes. So at least it would give him some assurity that, okay, if I do this, then at least I know I have the rest of the stuff. If he doesn't do that, then he doesn't get the rest of the stuff. That make sense?
Yeah,
and
through you, Mr. Chair, I get my, my consents and minor variances mixed up every now and then. Typically what we've done with variances with the conditions is that they can't really apply for their building permit until they clear the condition. That's the only way that we can hold them to the condition, essentially.
Any other questions? The only question I have is, you were talking about purchasing the lands to the south. Is it just a portion of the land or the entire land?
There's on the Terranet, there's an undeclared strip of land. Undeclared meaning it has a pin, but it's not owned by anybody currently. But that is a strip. It's about, let's say, for instance, we need 3 meters. It just so happens it's a 3.5 meter strip. That's a parcel. Again, what I saw in Terranet, that's independent of the railway. So if you can picture that in your head. So yeah, we need 3 meters. The strip happens to be 3.5 meters.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. So if you were able to acquire that strip, this condition of going from 7.5 meters to 3 meters would no longer even be required. Is that a fair statement? Because then you'd be able to comply with the requirements?
What's the minimum width for the laneway? Sorry, Chris.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the minimum width for two-way traffic is 7.5 meters. So I don't believe that they would be able to meet the requirement there.
Is there any? Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. Is there any chance? Can you? Do we have a moment just to see what the width of that parcel is? Or I can look it up.
Through you, Mr. Chair, not really. I don't have an accurate representation of how to measure it. I don't have anything with me right now.
Because the only reason I bring that point up, it may be a moot point to worry about this strip. If they buy the land, that condition, if we deny that particular one or don't include that particular one variance in our approval, and or you can, I don't know, maybe amend the building to it moves over 0.5 meter, and then you get that setback that you need from that side. I don't know if they're at the limit on the northern side. Okay. So I guess that's all I'm saying is that it may be a moot point if you can acquire that extra strip of property, and or if you need another 0.5 meter, if the railway is willing to part with 0.5 meter to make you whole, or 1 meter, whatever you need to get to that distance, maybe then that offset or that condition that's there doesn't really have to happen. And I guess the only other question I have, the 0 meter for the buffer, is that in the parking area?
That would be, Mr. Chair, to the south of the property along where the paved entrance is, and then at the hammerhead at the back. So yeah, around the parking and the laneway.
So it's just the fact that there's a strip there, and And I guess to Member Beauregard's questions or concerns, it's railway land on that side. Is there something specific you're worried about with regards to having a zero buffer on that side?
I was focusing more on the north side.
Gary?
I think the fact that it is on the rail side, and maybe unbeknownst to you, but we also own the land and the railroad. So, but I think then the question becomes safety, Transportation Act, those kind of things, depending on what's going in that area. So I guess in theory, you could buy the 3.5 meters, and if you need another half meter, I suppose the city could entertain the idea of selling it, but it may trip another regulation that doesn't work. So it sounds like it's all heading to, there needs to be some more thought and time put into this. And whether that means an adjournment or some other condition, I'll leave that to the applicant and the committee.
From my perspective, I don't necessarily disagree with having an adjournment, and maybe in a month things can be resolved or at least come up with a better plan, and I'm okay with that. I think if it's at the committee's request, there's no additional fee for that. It looks like we have applications coming next month as well, so it's not like we'd have to have a meeting just for this. So if that would be the concern and the preference of the committee to do that, I'm willing to adjourn this till next month. Hopefully we can get some progress to that point. And if we set next month as it's coming back next month, then at least no additional notices and stuff have to be had, and then we know it's coming back next month, and that might give the applicant and the city to work something out and come up with maybe some sort of alternative to making this work. I don't know. Angie, you had a question?
Thank you. Actually, I would like to move to adjourn.
If I might, just before that, there's no members of the public that wish to speak to these. I'm assuming you're here for the last application, okay? And we have no one online, so there's no public comment. So with that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn. Did I get a seconder to that? Gary?
Read up this file.
Adjournment of this file till next month. Okay. So with that, all in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. So we'll stand adjourned until next month. Okay. With just the reminder that committee members still an active case, so we still can't discuss it with anyone other than the committee and open meeting. So with that, thank you, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Chair, committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And recognizing the conflict on the last application for Eric, Madam Secretary, whenever you're ready to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last set of applications concerns consent applications B516PC, B0616PC, B0716PC, and B0816PC. These lands are municipally known as 480 Northland Avenue in the first density residential zone. In the respective applications, Agent Lanther and Gilmore Surveying Limited, on behalf of the owner, Ralph Rotella, is requesting for committee's consent to sever for the purposes of creating 4 residential lots. The subject parcels are shown as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the proposed sketches, where Part 1, 2, 3, and 4 are to be severed for proposed residential use, and Part 5 is to be retained for an existing residential use. Given the recommendation reports, planning staff recommend that respective consent applications be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report dated November 3rd, 2023. This report can be requested for viewing by the public, if desired, through the planning staff. That concludes this application.
Thank you. And I'm assuming the agent for the applicant is here this evening. Feel free to come forward to the podium on my right. And you can add any additional comments that you wish to with regards to the application.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. So our only comment that we would like to address is the archaeological study that's required on this property. So when we filed this application back in 2016, there was no requirement for an archaeological study. There was no recommendation for an archaeological study until it was brought up last year. So this whole land, there's 3 or 4 newer houses right beside it of these lots that never required an archaeological study. They never found anything, and there was a few existing homes there that were built, I believe, in the 70s, never requested or never had to do an archaeological study. So I contacted Katie Young, who is the senior development planner of the region, and asked her, what can we do to get out of this archaeological study? So she said we would have to bring it up to the Committee of Adjustment, the only way to remove the condition. And what she said that if the condition was removed, what will happen is that the region will put a clause on those lots that if anything is discovered during construction, during any kind of digging, then the plan or the owner of the property has the right to call the ministry, have the ministry come down. If they require an archaeological study, we would have to allow that, and we would agree to that. So our only concern about this is just that now all of a sudden they want an archaeological study on these 4 lots where there's already newer houses right beside it that never required it, never discovered anything, as we know. And but we're here just in front of you to hopefully we can clear that condition and move forward with this project.
All right, thank you. Gary?
Thank you. To the presenter, obviously there's pre-consultation, there's conversations between the region, did you do a pre-consultation with the city? Or, yes, okay. So this comment from the region, maybe it's not for you as the applicant, through you, Mr. Chair, to our planners. So what Mr. Rotella has said, is there a different understanding? Has this archaeological planner person at the region discussed this with you in respect to what the applicant has said?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it came up during pre-con. I think it was identified at the time. Usually what the region likes to do is say you'll have to get the ARC assessment before you apply. But in this scenario, they are saying that they're okay with it being added as a condition of the consent. But to answer your question, it was identified at the pre-con stage.
But that pre-con was for it wasn't for what we're doing right now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant, yes, but why they request ARC assessments isn't for any specific type of application, it's for development. And development includes the creation of a new lot, it includes, the construction of an apartment building, it includes many different things.
Yes, and I totally understand that. But it's just, if it's our responsibility, if we're digging and we find something, then we will contact the ministry and let them know. And if they have to do an archaeological study, we will allow it. We will have no choice. And we fully support that, 100%. We will support that.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to our planner. I guess I'm missing something in this, because I thought if you've spoken to the region and that is okay, yet we're asking for a stage 1. So I'm not sure. I guess my understanding is then that the region said there's this alternative way that we won't object to, but there's a reason why you put in phase 1. Could you clarify that? That's where I'm getting lost in all this.
Yeah, no, through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, the only correspondence that I have had with the region is that with the comments that would have been received and the pre-con notes as well. Again, both requested the ARC assessment, so we're just kind of being in line with their requirements. If there was any discussion about having it as a condition or worded in another way, like the applicant has mentioned, then I would have been more inclined to explore it. But my conversations with them were just that they were requesting the ARC assessment.
Okay.
So through you to Mr. Rotella, so when you're talking to the region, was there any sense that they were going to forward the opinion they gave to you to the city or to Mr. Room?
Nope. She also said that she wasn't even, the region won't even appeal it if the decision was made to remove it. I'm sure if there was a discussion after this, then
Let me ask, if I might. Now, you said the region would add this as a condition to the building permit?
it would be, yes, on the land itself. So they will put a clause, so any kind of digging, any kind of construction that will go on, that if we find anything,
Yeah.
we would have to contact the ministry. The city would have no responsibility. Nothing will come back on the city.
Okay. To our planner, does the region have to issue a building permit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know enough about the issuance of building permits to know if they have the ability to put clauses on them. In my experience, I don't believe I've ever dealt with something like that. I feel like it would be more appropriate if they wanted to add a clause to entwine it into the development agreement that's required as another condition of the consent. I think that would probably have made more sense if that's the route they wanted to take.
Because typically, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd know more than me, but maybe not all the way, but I didn't know the region even commented on building permits.
Through you, to you, Mr. Chair, they only do for septic systems. So if this site requires a septic, they typically require. But I would just like to reiterate my last point there. It's a standard clause of ours in most of our agreements that we do, development agreement, site plan agreement, that if an ARC assessment wasn't required, we would have that clause in there just as a fail-safe. So again, that's why I feel like that line of thinking would have made more sense if that's what they wanted to pursue.
Okay. Angie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I am a little confused about this. An archaeological assessment makes good sense if you have reason to believe that there's something there that may be sensitive. But I'm not seeing anything showing that there's any reason to believe that there's anything sensitive there. And in that case, this becomes excessive, I think. So I would be more inclined to go with the region's suggestion. I just think that it's excessive if there's no reason to believe there is an issue there. It just puts an undue cost on the landowners, and why would we want to do that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to elaborate on why it gets picked up, the region identifies these areas of archaeological potential based on if there is a current water stream within a certain amount of meters of the property, or what used to be a water stream, or alternatively a registered archaeological site. So I can only imagine that one of those three things were identified by the regional staff, which kind of triggers the requirement for the ARC assessment.
If I can, so the regional staff decides that, and the region is saying that they're not really too worried about putting this in place this time. That, to me, again, it's confusing. So I will leave it to the will of my fellow committee
Okay.
member.
I guess what I think we have here is a situation, to Demarie's point, is we're sitting here tonight with the applicant saying that the region has said what he said. We're sitting here with the planner who isn't apparently privy to that information or had that conversation with the region. If I'm sure if she or he said that to you, they'd be willing to say the same thing to Mr. Room. But that hasn't happened. But we're here tonight. So I guess through you, Mr. Chair, to the planner, if the region said what's been alleged, then they're going to, assume, say that to you. So what if this was at the satisfaction of the planning department, that if the region is fine with it, was it to be on title, this condition, if
I
there
believe
was
so,
something
yes.
found?
I believe so, yes.
Then that could get sorted tomorrow. You're talking to the region. If they have an alternative to a stage one, then they'll say it, and that's the alternative decision. So in other words, this can stay, subject to the region saying what they've said to the applicant. So I don't know if Mr. Room's happy with that. If the region tells you what they've told the applicant, like, are they not because, I mean, they sort of look after archaeological, if I'm not mistaken, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I think in essence, we're kind of asking them to double back on their, or not double back, but double down on commenting. We have requested them to provide comments to us. The applicant has paid a fee for their service to provide comments to us regarding the application, and I feel like it gives the appearance that we don't like what they have to say. So we're asking them if there's any other way around it, essentially. I just want to make the optics kind of clear.
Andrew?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I would think that really contacting the region saying, listen, this is what we're presented with by the applicant, can you confirm it? That's all. It's a very simple thing, and it's not asking them to double down on anything, it's just, can you confirm it? Very simple.
Yeah, if it's the decision of the committee, then that's...
Yeah, it makes sense. And that way, everything could go forward by putting that little piece in place, and it will all be said and done.
What would the wording of your proposed condition be with regards to that? Sorry, what would your wording of your proposed condition?
Well, I might need some help from the planner, because you're the one that's got to be satisfied. Because we'll be gone.
Yeah.
Well, technically, not really. In the case of consents, conditions could still come back to this committee to have them waived after the fact on consents. So if, for instance, we put this condition in, leave it in, we ask staff to do that comment, or the region will submit something to them in writing to that effect. The applicant could come back to us and say, okay, here's what's been presented to us. Will you now waive your condition? And we can waive that condition, and then it would satisfy staff, and then the condition disappears and it's resolved in some other manner.
But there's language in here tonight to enunciate that.
Yeah.
Sorry. There's language in here then tonight in an amendment to.
Well, you could just pass it as it is. That condition is there. They have the 2 years to satisfy that condition. If something changes that would grant us the ability to waive a condition, we could waive that condition. They can come back next month afterwards and say, okay, that we hereby waive that condition based on the additional information provided. We're satisfied. That condition is no longer required. And we could just take the condition off altogether, and staff's got their requirements, the property owner's got his requirements, and the world is round.
Well, I guess to Andy, remember Devin Ray's point is, why do that if both alternatives are there, the region's the decider? We don't have to come back. The applicant doesn't have to come back. We're coming back to another meeting, another application, and another vote. I think.
Thank you. If I can, just to simplify things, I'm only suggesting this because it would help our planner be more comfortable with it. He was saying he doesn't want the region to think that we're getting them to double down on anything, and it was just a solution to that. I'm really okay with just striking it. I'm all right with that. I really am. I think it's not necessary. So.
Well, I'm fine with that. I was just wanting to have deference to the planner and deference to the applicant, but. Yeah.
I guess the only comment, and I have no doubt that's what the region said to you, is that if what they said to you was not exactly correct, or maybe you didn't understand them exactly correctly, and whatever that proposal is can actually happen for whatever reason, and that's why I asked. I didn't know the region issued building permits or comment on building permits or can add conditions to building permits. I don't know how it would get onto the building permit as a requirement. That was my only, I guess, concern. It just, I've never heard of that before, but I could stand corrected. So if we do waive it altogether, whether that happens or not, it may not actually happen. And if we're okay with not having an archaeological assessment potentially, whether you find something or not, then that's the decision of the committee to do that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to not have a month delay and not have, would the applicant have to resubmit a fee, an application?
To come back and waive a condition, I believe they would have to pay a fee, yes.
Yeah, I just, I don't believe it's a double down. We just have an issue of clarity. I mean, this was a 2016 application, and then it's come to this. And, yeah, I get the chair's point that they should be dealing with what they said, and it's a new application, and it was circulated to them, so why didn't they say that? But I think to have a discrepancy here tonight that all parties think could have easily happened, and for the region to clarify the point they mentioned to the applicant, to the planner, puts this thing to bed, potentially tomorrow or the next day. And we're not back here. I don't know if that's, in terms of a comment from the applicant and the planner, your take on that. In other words, are you willing to have one of the conditions that if the region verifies what they said to the planner, then there's no stage one?
Yeah.
So if I might, if we added to that condition, I believe it's condition 6, landowner submits a stage 1 archaeological assessment. So at the end of that, if we added a comment and added, unless an alternative method could be applied to the satisfaction of the planner's
I would be okay with that.
agreement, would that satisfy that? And then that would give yourself to either convince the region to send something, or for you to contact the region and say, okay, this was said, is this an alternative? The only problem is that if they now deny that they said that, you're still stuck with a
No, that's
level 1 assessment.
No, that's fine. I
Does that
completely
make
understand
sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay, all right. So does that work for everyone? All right.
Yep.
And we don't have any other members of the public that wish to speak to this application. Is there any other questions or comments of the applicant? Is there any further comments that you wish to add at this time?
No, that was it.
All right.
Thank you.
So with that, anyone got a recommendation? Gary, Angie?
What's the word to add?
Just, I can, if you want to present it, I can amend with a friendly amendment the extra.
Sure. Thank you. With respect to application BO516PC, BO6-16PC, BO7-16PC, BO8-16PC, the lands legally known as Concession 2, Part Lot 30, municipally known as 480 Northland Avenue. The consent application BO5-16PC, BO6-16PC, PO7-16PC, BO8-16PC be granted subject to conditions outlined in the staff report dated November 3rd, 2023. Do you want to throw that amendment in now, or you want me to read the last bit?
Go to the end and then I'll just add it after.
For the following reasons: 1, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. the regional official plan, City of Port Colborne official plan, and will also comply with the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended.
Thank you. Seconder, Angie? So with that, I'd ask that a friendly amendment to condition 6 that was in the planning report at the end be added unless an alternative method can be applied to the satisfaction of the planning department or planner to satisfy that condition. Does that work?
If you guys remember it all, I'll write it down, because otherwise you're going to have to listen to it.
We got to record. I'll give the actual wording afterwards.
Great, thanks.
So if that works for both of you. So with that, any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you
so much.
Let's see. Other business. We were at the last meeting. I think we voted upon a meeting schedule for next year. I believe this meeting was brought forward, a little kind of cover page to cover that. So with that, I can move her in a seconder for officially accepting the schedule for next year. Angie, Gary, all in favor? That'd be carried. Is there any other business?
Just wanted to add, so that'll be sent to us, that schedule?
Yeah.
It's part of the agenda.
Oh, it was part of
It
the
was?
packet. You got to go online and find it.
Okay, thank you.
It's on the meeting
Yep.
page.
Yep, okay.
Anyone else have any other business? I just have a quick question. And I think I've asked this before with regards to going to the region for planning. I thought that latest bill from the government that's received royal assent now eliminates the Niagara region from planning. Is that a fair statement or not?
Not essentially. There's still a commenting agency for a lot of our applications. It's largely due to, like, we don't have the capacity to comment on certain things. I do my best, but I'm not an expert in environmental systems. I'm not an expert in septic systems. I'm not an expert in archaeology. So we still have to rely on them for a lot of those services, and we do have a service agreement between them to assist us with those features, essentially.
Just to add to that, because actually this came up today in a conversation, the region has offered those services on a contractual basis, or any municipality can say, no, thank you, we'll get our own third party to do it, and therefore you don't need the region. So basically the region is now, they can be out of it at the bequest of the municipality, unless the municipality has either internal resources or will buy the internal resource and not need them, and both parties will, I'm assuming, give a price to what that cost is. So that's how I know it. But to your point, it's right. It was given the option to not do it.
I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
Is
that fair, Chris? The way
In essence, yes. You start to get into an area that's probably way above my pay grade.
Yeah.
Well, and in all fairness, it's really not up to the Committee of Adjustment to decide.
Correct.
It's just another comment that comes in.
Yeah.
I'm just asking the question.
As long as it's a professional comment, wherever it comes.
Yeah, it'd be no different
Qualified.
than if an applicant went and got a planner to present it's just another report that comes forward, right, for consideration. Very good. With that, we also have the minutes from our last meeting, and mover and a seconder. Gary, Angie, all those in favor. What's that?
I said just make a name.
Yeah. I kind of went the opposite way around. All those in favor? That'll be carried. And with that, I will consider this hearing adjourned. Thank you all.